Alright guys, so I wanted to give you a quick video on the tack that I have for sale, kind of how it came about, why I like it, benefits of it, and that kind of thing. There's always been some controversy about BitLess, but I'm here to explain to you how BitLess isn't brainless, that there actually is a better way. So I don't know if any of you have ever used one of these. These are the commonly available quote-unquote BitLess bridals. And they are pretty, but there's some things I really don't like about them. One, they're expensive for what they are. They cost a lot, particularly because they tend to be one-dimensional. They work on maybe one horse you have, but if you're like me and you have a lot of different horses, or you ride horses for other people, you need tack that fits across the board and only fits maybe 1% of your animal. Also, it does this offside lateral pulling. If you look at that third picture with the brown headstall, it's a really bizarre pull, and I find it to be ineffective. These also, again, with this third picture, looks like a beta material, which is very grippy, rubbery kind of a texture, and it can rub. Some of them actually have rubber bumped lining on the noseband, which can cause a lot of loss of hair or rub the horse raw. And also under here, like these horses are very cleaned up and well groomed, but I have pasture horses with big old billy goat whiskers, and those grippy beta reins crossing under the chin will actually twist into their hairs and cause the horse a lot of aggravation and a lot of discomfort underneath the chin when they shouldn't be feeling any sort of discomfort. Also, there's no leverage. If you're pulling on this left rein, as in the same picture, it's pulling from underneath the chin to the cheek on the other side and kind of dragging the cheek over, which is actually one of the strongest parts of the horse's face because it's the rear cheek and then up into the very strong poll area. And there's no pressure. These nose bands are very smooth and very flat. And if your horse decides to take off and lean into them, there is not a lot of leverage or discomfort to persuade them otherwise. And if you don't have leverage, it means you have to repeat your corrections over and over, and you're really just teaching the horse a bad behavior as opposed to giving a good, clear correction and moving forward. So here's the deal. BitLess isn't necessarily useless. It just depends on the equipment that you have. Some equipment works better than others, and I don't find those bitless bridles like I showed you to be very effective. I know a lot of people like them, but I have not really had any luck with them. And 90% of the time I do ride bitless. And there's a lot of reasons for it, not just me, but there are a lot of reasons to ride bitless. You're starting out horses, you really want to stay out of their face as long as you can. You want to be down to a very refined state of work before they get on the bit, because the bit should be a very simple transition from work they already understand, and it should give you further refinement in your work. If you're restarting older horses, say they're set in their ways, or you have horses that are very crazy and blown up, which I have a lot of, any pain in their face or reason for them to feel defensive is going to cause you a lot of grief. Now and again, you're going to have to take 2 steps back to take 3 steps forward. And I totally, totally get it. Sometimes you've got to go backwards in order to move forwards and get over those humps. But most of the time, you want to keep yourself moving forward, which means you want your horse thinking and working and not on the defense trying to protect itself from you. So the less fights we can start with the horse, the better. Also, if you have lesson students, particularly if you run therapy or anything like that, or students with bad hands, if you've got people on your horse that never ride and you want them to be able to ride, but you really don't feel comfortable giving them control of your horse's face, this type of a bitless setup will work really well for you. Much, much more forgiving than a bit. Also, just horses in general with sensitive mouths. I had a mare of mine had a very large sarcoid in the corner of her mouth and could not be bitted. That's how I got into the bitless bridles that you saw before. I've owned those and used them on a variety of horses, so that's why I know that they tend not to work very well. And I needed something. I could not go to a bit with her. She could not be in a bit, so I had to find another way. And since then, my personal preference really is to just ride bitless. It's just what I prefer now that I have a very effective way to do it. So now what? I ride bitless, but I don't like those bitless bridles. Where my inspiration comes from is a piece of equipment called a hakima. and it's a Colombian headstall that's very similar to a bridal, but it does not have a bit. The one pictured here is for working. And if you're not familiar with paso finos, you probably have not been exposed to this, but it's a wonderful piece of equipment for working your horse. My favorite feature is the two rings on the chin strap underneath. That actually was amazing for me because you can leave two sets of reins on whether or not you want to ride in doubles. I prefer to ride doubles, but if you don't like that, you can leave reins on either side and you can pull a horse's head down and get a lot more finesse and function with having the rings on the bottom as well, and you're not stuck to just the rings near the mouth. But this pulls just like you would as if you had a bit in their mouth. So if you go from bitted to bitless, it's very, very seamless. Typically, a horse will be ridden with this and then a bit over top of it. So you can put the bit on and let them wear the bit and not work off of it at all, or you can switch back and forth between your Basel and your bit. So here's the thing. A client came to me with an off-the-track thoroughbred, and he hadn't been raced, and he had been converted to a very bizarre type of trail horse. He was not really his thing to be outside. Thoroughbreds in general are not necessarily like that. And he was petrified of the bit. He would curl himself so far underneath just so he wouldn't touch the bit that he wouldn't move forward. You could walk next to him as quickly as he would canter. It was really pretty awful. And you kind of come at a loss of how do I have control of this big sort of crazy thing, who's not thinking because he's scared of this bit and he's scared of what you're going to do to him. So he's not using his mind. You're not reasoning with him because he's not thinking. But I need to be able to get him in a better state. So what do? I actually told the client that I was going to ride him in one of my bitless setups. So I wasn't going to use a bit on him, and she thought that I was really crazy to get on this big horse who was a little insane with no bit. But for him, he couldn't think with the bit, and he couldn't go forward. He was just so cramped up, not even collected, just squished and compacted and miserable. He was not fun to ride. He did not enjoy it. It was a miserable place to be in. But when we wrote him in the bit list, we freed up his mouth. And doing that freed up his head so he wasn't thinking about it anymore. And when he quit his preoccupation with what might happen in his mouth, it freed up his whole body. And he worked beautifully. And he would get great extensions and great relaxation and drop his head down. And then when we took him back into the bit, because he was for dressage, so when we worked him back into the bit, he went on the bit fine. And we played around with some different ones, and most horses will have a bit that they prefer better or find to be more comfortable. And we found a couple that he really enjoyed, and that could be ridden for him in dressage. That he, were legal bits and allowed. And he really became kind of an amazing horse. But you have to be able to think outside the tradition of training to figure out what you can do to fit the best for the horse. And for him, it would have taken 10 times longer, if at all, to really get him that free and that thinking with the bit in his mouth. So here's the thing. I like simple, I like effective, and I like multifunctional, which means I spend my money on one thing and I can use it for lots of different things. I don't want pieces I can't use across the board, and I don't want gimmicky things. I want true functional and effective tools. I work horses, and I work big ones and fast ones and crazy ones and rescued ones. I mean, I ride paso finos and I jump and I do trail riding, and lots of crazy things. And occasionally I'll get your run of the mill, just regular, easy, relaxed horse. So the things that I came up with to use for myself are the things that I sell. And they're the things that I found to be effective and work really well for me and for my clients. I had, a variety of clients that played with my tack to see if they liked it. And I've had, a lot of success with it. People have really enjoyed it. So I wanted to make this video for you so you can understand what some of those pieces are, and really have a better way to bitless. So next up, I'm going to add on a YouTube video that I made for converting your headstall that you already have. Again, let's save money, with just some very simple pieces. I appreciate your time and your attention. If you need me, you can find me on Facebook at wall to wall barefoot farrier. Thanks again and have a great day.